Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Lefty Agenda. And I just wanted to say, if Daddy Joe thinks he can take these away, he'll have to pry them out of my cold, dead hands. I'm only partially joking. Today I wanted to do more of a nuanced look at gun control and what exactly that means. For too long, I believe we've been divided on this issue when us on the far left might have more in common with the cowboys than we thought. Taking a look at gun control, I think there's more of a conversation to have when it comes to the controlling of the guns. First, we'll start with a brief overview and history of gun control laws. Then we'll jump into who is affected most by gun control legislation. We won't forget to talk about our good pals at the NRA. And then finally, we'll end it with some of what I think are practical ways we can help regulate guns while still protecting the right for a 9-year-old to shoot his eye out. Again, I'm just kidding. America has one of the highest rates of gun-related violence in the world, and it seems nobody can talk about gun control without being black-bagged by the NRA. So we'll see if this is my last video. Part 1. History of gun control legislation. This is going to be a little on the boring side, but bear with me. I did a lot of research and I have to purge it from my brain somewhere. The first piece of gun-related policy dates back to 1791, and it was when our Constitution was amended to state the following: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, there you have it, folks. The proof is in the pudding, right? It's not quite as simple as that, though. The Founding Fathers didn't really give us a lot to go off of, which is why the debate is still going on to today. In 1934, we saw the first gun restriction policy put in place, called the National Firearms Act. This act was passed as part of Roosevelt's New Deal for crime. It basically imposed taxes on manufacturing, selling, and transporting of firearms. 1938 saw the Federal Firearms Act, where gun importers and dealers must obtain a federal firearms license to continue selling firearms. This act also barred certain people from being able to own guns. This mostly included felons. After the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1968, the Federal Firearms Act was replaced by the Gun Control Act. It set higher restrictions such as age limits, stricter licensing, and regulations on the industry. The Firearm Owner Protection Act of 1986 implemented protections for gun owners, like allowing licensed dealers to sell guns at gun shows in their state and loosening the regulations on the sale and transfer of ammunition. That's the majority of gun laws that are applicable to today's video. There have been a few others since then, but nothing that I think is too noteworthy for our purposes. What is noteworthy is some of the statistics. 38,000 Americans die per year from gun violence. 51% of suicides involve a gun. And those numbers do include police violence, or at least the 38,000. And this leads me perfectly into my next section. Part 2. Who is most affected by gun violence? Gun control has a little bit of a skeleton in its closet. Gun regulation laws started out pretty racist. Post-Civil War black codes were implemented to bar black people from being able to own firearms. Even after they were abolished in 1866, many southern states enacted high taxes on guns or banned inexpensive guns from being sold. This blocked black people and less wealthy white people from being able to purchase guns. This continues on into the modern day. It may not be as apparent, but it is still an issue. Some of the gun laws enacted at the state level in the 1990s required police issuing licensing and permits to keep gun ownership from unpopular populations, as it was put in an essay called The Racist Origins of U.S. Gun Control by Steve Eckwall. Public housing residents are singled out for gun bans, and gun sweeps in high-crime neighborhoods using profiling for individuals who may have a gun. This was known as Operation Ceasefire. One of the more famous examples is the ironic case of the Mulford Act. I say ironic because of who is involved in it. I think a lot of Republicans and gun rights activists would be a little bit surprised to find out the history. In 1967, then Governor of California Ronald Reagan himself passed the Mulford Act, which made it illegal to carry loaded firearms around in public. The reason for such a strict infringement of a constitutional right was none other than the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were a political movement formed in 1966 promoting black liberation and socialism. In addition to free breakfast programs for children, food programs, and community health clinics for education and treatment of diseases, the Black Panthers would carry around loaded guns to protect themselves from police brutality. It is suggested that there are other factors that may have played a role in the Mulford Act besides the Black Panthers, but looking at the headlines, I think it's clear to see that, if not entirely the reason for the act, it was at least the primary one. And good old Ronnie Reagan couldn't not be racist. Another interesting character who played a part in the passing of the Mulford Act was our good buddies at the NRA. Part 3. The NRA. No gun control essay is complete without dropping in on the National Rifles Association, or NRA. I could do a whole video on the bullshit they've pulled so far, but for the sake of time, I'll give a brief overview. The NRA was originally established in 1871 and was actually a very nice and respectable organization at first. It focused mostly on training hunters and marksmen on gun safety. When the Gun Control Act of 1968 rolled out, many NRA members were worried about getting their guns taken away. This led to what is referred as the Cincinnati Revolt, where the entire leadership of the NRA was overthrown by more politically radical gun owners. This sparked the move from gun safety into political lobbying. In an amazing article by Rukmani Bhatia, I probably totally butchered that, I'm so sorry, called Guns, Lies, and Fear, he states the NRA uses rhetoric mimicking the tactics of autocrats and demagogues. By cultivating identity politics and vilifying any opposition, they have brainwashed millions of Americans with pro-firearm propaganda. The future of the organization may be a little up in the air right now due to a recent bankruptcy that was filed. But the NRA has made it their mission to strike down any attempt at gun control legislation since the Gun Control Act of 1968. And according to the Violence Policy Center, they receive millions of dollars in contributions from firearm industry conglomerates. If you want to explore more on the NRA, there is an excellent podcast called Gangster Capitalism. The second season is dedicated completely to the NRA, and I would highly recommend giving it a listen. Super informational, super well done. Definitely give that a listen. Part 4. Back to regulations. You might be asking yourself, Magical Computer Man, what are we to do with all of this gun nonsense? And to that I would answer, I don't know. I wish that I had the solution, but alas, I am just a magical talking computer voice. I do think we need to start having more specific conversations around gun control. I tend to lean away from it myself, but I understand the importance of not just letting everyone and their dog have a lethal weapon if they want, especially in the wake of mass shootings and different things that have been going on. I kind of wanted to take a look at what a leftist perspective might be on gun control. So, no leftist essay would be complete without mentioning our communist daddy Karl Marx. This is what he had to say about guns. Under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated, by force if necessary. I also wanted to throw in a quote from Lenin. An oppressed class which does not strive to learn to use arms, to acquire arms, only deserves to be treated like slaves. And lastly from Mao, political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. And we could go into a deeper dive on what exactly these quotes mean, but I think it's safe to say that all of these leaders saw the importance of being able to arm the people and arm the lower class. I myself, like many leftist scumbags, don't want to disarm myself in the middle of a fascist insurrection, and I would advise most people do not do that. The police and the powers that be never side with the left, and that's just historical fact. I do think, however, we can talk about ways to make guns in society safer for the average individual. 85% of gun owners and non-gun owners support some form of gun control, whether that's gun safety classes being a requirement, background checks, or just not allowing private gun sales to take place with no questions asked. I think when we ask ourselves these questions, we should also ask who will be most affected by gun legislation. If we make people have to have a permit from law enforcement before getting guns, is that going to be biased against people in communities of color? The idea of banning assault weapons is a nice thought on its surface, but when you consider the fact that the majority of gun violence is done with handguns, you kind of have to rethink what is going to be most beneficial here. And to any of my conservatives and moderates out there in the cyber void, always remember, if you go far enough left, you get your guns back. So that's all I really have for the video. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on some of the gun control issues that are coming up, and I know it's kind of a heated debate. I, for one, just on a personal level, and this is completely opinion, don't think that taking firearms away from people and weaponry away from people is the solution. Again, I think there's ways to make it safer, but I definitely don't support any kind of gun ban that's going to be happening. And in true anarchist ideology, I mean, the guns are the ability to protect yourself is everything. But yeah, I just thought I would bring this up and let me know what you think. Please leave a comment down below, like the video. If you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe, and I will catch y'all later.